Welcome to the channel. If you're watching this video, buckle up, because what's about to unfold is nothing short of a real-life action movie. A secret bunker, an unmarked SUV, a neighbor who used to cause trouble, now a reluctant ally. What do you think is waiting underground? Will they make it out before the final door shuts for good? Drop your theories in the comments. Any one of them could be right. And whatever you do, don't take your eyes off the screen. I didn't build this barricade to start a war, but the moment that iron gate closed behind me, the war found its way to my doorstep. When the red and blue lights flashed across the newly installed steel gate, I knew Karen was at it again. But this time, it wasn't just another warning slip in my mailbox, or a hissed insult from the sidewalk. This time, she called the police. Two officers stepped out of the patrol car, one older, with a seasoned face, and a nameplate that read, Sergeant Frank Mallory, and a younger one, visibly more alert, named Officer Dean Holt. They didn't draw their weapons or bark questions, but every step they took carried a weight I could feel. This wasn't just a routine check. Karen stood less than 20 feet away, waving her arms like she was narrating the crime of the century. He's blocking a public road. This is shared access for the entire neighborhood. I've already warned him. I remained on my porch, arms crossed. This is my driveway, on record. Private property since 1981. No one has the right to enter unless I allow it. Sergeant Mallory approached, his voice low and calm, but firm. Mr. Price, we received a report that you've erected an unauthorized barrier on what might be public access. Care to explain? I gestured toward the stack of documents on the patio table. Property records, parcel maps, ownership deeds. It's all right there. I haven't built anything on public land. This is my boundary. People just assumed it was public because they've gotten used to trespassing. Dean Holt, silent until now, stepped over to examine the files. He flipped through them with thinly veiled suspicion. Then why the sudden installation of a steel gate? After all these years? Good question. One I hadn't planned on answering. I'm tired, I said, eyes fixed on Karen. Tired of being disturbed in the middle of the night. Tired of cleaning up trash someone else leaves behind. Tired of stepping onto my own porch and seeing strangers cut across my land like it's theirs. Karen shrieked, "You're making life hard for the whole neighborhood. What if an ambulance needs access? What if there's a fire?" I pointed down the street. There's a wide open road over there, Karen. This isn't the only way out, just the most convenient for people who don't respect boundaries. Mallory gave a slow nod after reviewing the documents. Legally speaking, Mr. Price is within his rights to put up a gate if this is indeed private property. It hit Karen like a punch to the gut. Her face turned crimson, trembling with rage. You're siding with him. This is wrong. You'll regret letting this go. Dean Holt, however, kept his eyes on the gate. His look was no longer that of a responding officer. There was something else, something more cautious, more calculating. Maybe it was the gate's construction, thick, reinforced, with a mechanical lock. Or maybe it was the silence I held that unsettled him. But before anyone could say another word, the first black SUV rolled by. No one spoke, but Holt and I both turned just in time to catch it pass. No plates, tinted windows, and eerily quiet. Karen didn't notice, but Holt did. His brow furrowed. He quietly pulled out his phone and took a photo of the barely visible tag. I exhaled slowly. You see that? That's what you should be worried about. I only meant to dig out a bit more space to expand my workshop. But what I found underground wasn't just dirt. It was a secret. And that secret started looking back at me. That day was overcast, with a cold wind blowing in from the north, carrying the damp, earthy scent of post-rain soil. I had just stacked a few boards when my shovel hit something solid, not rock. It was smooth, polished, almost like glass, but it was concrete. At first, I thought it was an old foundation slab left over from some past structure, but then one more dig stopped me in my tracks. The surface wasn't cracked or uneven with age. It was reinforced, with a layer of steel underneath. And this wasn't residential-grade construction. I dropped the shovel, knelt down, and brushed away the moist soil by hand. The edge revealed itself, circular, not a slab, a lid, something buried, sealed, and locked, on purpose. I didn't dig any further that evening, partly because I was starting to feel a chill up my spine, mostly because the sun was going down, and I had no intention of being outside when the dark swallowed that part of the yard. But from that moment, everything started to shift. That night, my home security system triggered for the first time in months, not because of a stray cat, not from wind, but because of two figures in black captured on camera at exactly 3:27 a.m. They didn't carry flashlights. They didn't arrive in a car. They walked straight to the spot I had dug, paused, looked down, and one of them knelt, placing a hand on the ground like he was checking the temperature or confirming something. Then both disappeared. No sound, no trace. The next morning, I inspected the fence. The lock I installed, a military-grade security lock I used during service, had been cut. But what chilled me more was that it had been replaced with a cheaper off-the-shelf lock, as if someone didn't want me to realize I'd been breached. I replayed the footage, frame by frame. The second guy, the one in the back, had something strapped to his back. A device, an antenna, a tracking unit of some kind. I couldn't tell. But the way he kept checking the blind spots of my cameras made one thing clear. These weren't ordinary trespassers. And then I saw Karen. She was talking to a neighbor, but this time her voice wasn't screeching like usual. She whispered, her face pale, her eyes constantly darting toward the area I had been digging. She knew, maybe not everything, but she had sensed something. I didn't tell anyone, didn't call the cops, and absolutely didn't call Karen. I did one thing. I locked the gate, added a second layer of fencing, and threw a heavy tarp over the spot where I'd found the concrete lid. I wasn't planning to dig again, at least not yet. But then, the next night, a black SUV returned, circling my house 3 times, each pass exactly 3 hours apart. And on the final round, at 4:17 a.m., it stopped. 2 minutes, at the corner, engine running. No one got out, just waiting. That's when I understood what I had found underground was something I was never meant to uncover, and someone out there is making sure it stays that way. The first SUV just drove by. The second one lingered a little longer, but by the time the third showed up, I knew for certain I was being hunted. At first, I tried to calm myself, chalk it up to paranoia. Who hasn't felt a little uneasy being watched by a nosy neighbor, right? But that SUV wasn't paranoia, and every time it showed up, it was the same. Pitch black windows, faded plates, and an engine so quiet it could have belonged to a ghost. The first one appeared right after I hit the concrete slab. It cruised past my house at dusk. No stops, no hesitation, like it was simply marking its presence. But the following night, I counted 3 passes, each one exactly 180 minutes apart, 9 p.m., midnight, and 3 a.m. As if their internal clock didn't miss a single second, as if they were running a formula, gauging my reactions with each pass. So I did what anyone in my position would do. I started watching the watchers, installed infrared cameras under the eaves, set up a wireless cloud-based recording system, even placed a thermal sensor aimed at the front gate. And that's how I confirmed that the SUV didn't just pass by. Someone got out. At 2:14 a.m., a figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a baseball cap, stood outside my southern fence line. He didn't try to enter, didn't say a word. He just stood there, facing my house. The next morning, Dean Holt, the younger officer from the blocked driveway incident, knocked on my door. No uniform, no patrol car, just a man with heavy eyes and a quiet urgency. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice dry. I nodded. For the first time, I saw a cop not carrying authority, but carrying doubt. Dean didn't waste time. He pulled out his phone, swiped through a few photos, and showed me the screen. I held my breath. Images from Dean's dash cam. A black SUV parked 2 blocks from my house, exactly at 4:17 a.m. The streetlight glinted off the windshield, just enough to reveal no one inside, no driver, no passengers, but the engine still running. "I ran the plates," Dean said. "Nothing, not registered to any agency, not in the state system, and not listed as a private vehicle either." I swallowed hard. "So that means..." Means someone doesn't want to be found, he finished. I led Dean to the back, where the tarp still covered the concrete lid I'd discovered. He knelt, quietly pressing his hand to the surface. This isn't civilian-grade construction, he murmured. Feels more like military. I nodded. And I think they're protecting it. Dean was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said something that sent a chill straight through my spine. No. I don't think they're protecting it. I think they're waiting to see if you're dumb enough to open it. We went back inside. I replayed the footage from the night before. This time, the SUV didn't just stop. Near the end of the clip, a streetlight's reflection glanced across the windshield. And for a split second, I saw a face, wearing sunglasses, staring directly into the camera. No flinch, no surprise, just watching. Dean exhaled and pulled up a chair next to me. Logan, if you dig any further, they won't just watch anymore. I looked up, meeting his eyes. So, what do I do? Dean stared out the window where daylight was beginning to fade. The question isn't what to do, he said quietly. It's whether you still have time to do anything before they make their move. And right now, I'm not sure the answer is yes. I used to think Karen was my biggest problem until she showed up on my porch at 7 a.m. No makeup, no screaming, and trembling. The knock startled me. I'd been up all night rewatching the footage of the third SUV. I hadn't even made coffee yet when I heard it. Not loud, but urgent, fast-paced, and unmistakably serious. When I glanced through the peephole, I couldn't believe my eyes. Karen. Her usually coiffed hair was a mess, her face pale, eyes sunken with fatigue. And for the first time in years, she didn't have that venomous glare. She looked afraid. I opened the door just a crack. What do you want? Karen didn't answer right away. She glanced over her shoulder, then stared at me, like she was checking to see if I was still alive. We need to talk. Now about them. I froze. Who's they? The ones watching you, she whispered. And me. Dean Holt was still in the kitchen, still there from the night before. When he saw me bring Karen in, he jumped to his feet, hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. Karen raised both hands fast, alarmed. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just can't stay silent anymore. We sat down. Karen stood near the window, repeatedly pulling back the curtain, glancing out. The sunlight lit her trembling hand against the fabric. I used to think you were a pain, Logan, she began, voice hoarse, until I realized you dug up something they really don't want anyone touching. I haven't told anyone, I said sharply. Nothing's online, no reports, no authorities. Then why are they still coming? She asked, her voice cracking. Dean folded his arms. Who exactly are you talking about? Karen hesitated, then spilled the kind of truth I never expected. My brother used to work for a real estate firm, the kind that appraises land for development projects. 5 years ago, they were contracted to survey this entire neighborhood, including your property. I narrowed my eyes. And he found something off, Karen said. A gap in the land records. Your plot had never officially been designated for private ownership. It was once government property, and then, suddenly, it just vanished from the system. Dean and I exchanged a glance. The pieces were lining up. A few days later, a group of men came to see my brother. Black suits, no names. They didn't threaten him, didn't lay a hand on him. They just said, "Don't dig any deeper." I swallowed hard. Did he stop? He quit. A week later, his office burned to the ground. No investigation, no arrests. Karen turned and looked me in the eye. Logan, I saw that SUV parked outside my house last night. You're not the only one being watched anymore. I think they're waiting for you to slip up, so they can erase both of us at once. Dean pulled out his phone and opened the security app. They're not just waiting, they're preparing. I shot to my feet, head spinning. Every puzzle piece Karen dropped fell perfectly into place with what I had unearthed. This wasn't about neighbors, wasn't about property lines. This was something buried, something hidden for a reason, and I had just unknowingly dug it up. Karen clenched her fists, her eyes dead serious. If you're still planning to dig, I'm going with you, because if I stay behind, I'll disappear too. I looked at Dean. He gave a small nod. Then we don't have a choice anymore. We left the house through the back door. No goodbyes, no clear plan, just one undeniable truth waiting to be unearthed, and 3 people walking straight into it. I led the way, gripping a flashlight in one hand and an old crowbar from the workshop in the other. Dean Holt followed close behind, eyes scanning the brush, his hand already resting loosely on his holstered sidearm. Karen brought up the rear. Gone was the woman who once threatened to sue neighbors over a fence that was too tall. Now, she was just someone tagging along because she knew if she stayed behind, she'd be the next one to vanish. We crossed the empty lot behind the house. It wasn't fully dark yet, but the light had dimmed just enough to cast everything in a cold gray hue. The patch of dirt I had dug days earlier still bore the scars of my shovel. The tarp covering it rose and fell in the breeze, like it was breathing. I pulled it back. The cold concrete underneath emerged again, circular outline with a thin gap I had started carving out the other day. Dean crouched beside it, tracing the crack with his fingers. We probably shouldn't open this, but if we don't, we'll never understand what's coming. I nodded. Karen took a few steps back, clasping her hands tightly. I still think this is insane, she murmured. That's the only reasonable part of all this, I replied, then drove the crowbar into the seam. Dean stepped in beside me. Together we pried. The first time, the lid just shuddered. The second time, it shifted, barely an inch. On the third try, a dry whoosh echoed out, like air escaping a sealed room. A cold draft hit my face, no smell, but suffocating, as if the space beneath hadn't been opened in decades. Dean shined the flashlight downward. A metal ladder came into view, descending straight into blackness. The walls weren't concrete. They were steel, polished, solid, and far too perfect to belong to any civilian construction. Karen swallowed hard. Whoever built this definitely didn't want it found. I placed my foot on the top rung, hand gripping the icy rail. Then let's find out what they were hiding, before they do. Dean went first. I followed. Karen hesitated for a few short breaths, and then started climbing down as well. None of us spoke another word. All we could hear was the faint creaking of the ladder beneath our weight. And below us, a narrow metal corridor slowly revealed itself, swallowing what little daylight remained above. The air inside the bunker was thick, as if every molecule had been sealed in place by time, or by design. Each step on the ladder creaked, echoing down the narrow shaft like a knock from the past, a warning. This was not a place for people. At least, not anymore. Dean descended first, flashlight sweeping across cold steel walls. I followed, catching the scent of old metal and something sharp, like ozone, stinging my nose. Karen came last, her grip tight on the railing, as if afraid it might vanish beneath her fingers. Finally, my boots touched the floor, smooth, spotless, not a single crack, as if the place had been built months ago, not decades. A long corridor stretched out before us, ending at a sealed, rust-streaked steel door. You see anything? I whispered. Dean pointed up toward a sign near the ceiling. The letters were blurred by dust, but they were clearly not in English. He wiped it clean with the sleeve of his jacket. And that's when I saw it. Cyrillic script. I didn't need to ask. Dean nodded. Russian. Karen exhaled sharply. You're telling me we just crawled into a Soviet bunker under your house? I didn't answer, mostly because I wasn't sure I wanted to know the real answer either. Dean reached for the door handle, and it wasn't locked. The hinges groaned open, a sound like the first scream in a bad horror film. But what was inside was worse. A room, lined with ancient control panels, flickering monitors still glowing faintly with power. Karen stumbled back, panicked. This place, it's not abandoned. It's still alive. I stepped toward the main console. Beneath a thick layer of dust, one keyboard stood out. Clean. Untouched by time. Someone had used it recently. Scattered across the floor were faded documents. I picked one up. Paper yellowed with age, but the writing sharp and legible. A technical report in Russian, stamped Secretno, top secret. Dean wiped a corroded electrical panel and let out a sharp breath. This emblem. I've seen it before. Not American. Old Soviet military. Classic design. No doubt. Karen looked like she was about to scream. Why is there a secret Soviet facility under our country? I had no answers, only one feeling pulsing harder and harder in my chest. This wasn't just a bunker. It was a final link in something much larger, and now we'd activated it. Dean turned to me, jaw clenched tight. If someone's been watching this place, they know we're in. I swallowed hard. And if they haven't made a move yet, it's because they're waiting for the right moment. The first sound wasn't loud. A soft click, barely audible, echoing from the steel hallway behind us. But in this underground chamber, it rang out like a siren. Dean immediately shut off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room, save for the faint flickering glow of the control panel screens in the corner. We didn't move, didn't speak. Only the sharp rhythm of our own breathing and the pounding of our hearts filled our ears. A footstep, then another. Not hurried, not hesitant, just steady, measured, like whoever was approaching had nothing to fear. Karen clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. I backed against the freezing steel wall, still clutching the crowbar like a lifeline. Dean drew his weapon, motioning for me to move toward the far corner of the room, a shallow recess in the wall, just wide enough to hide in. Then we heard it. The corridor door slammed against the wall. Not by wind. Someone had pushed it. I held my breath. My feet rooted to the floor as a flashlight beam swept across the hallway, then back again. It glinted briefly through the door frame, past the edge of our room, and paused, as if the light itself had seen something and was waiting for the one holding it to catch up. Dean motioned firmly, "Don't move." Karen pressed against me, her shoulder trembling violently. Then we saw him. A tall figure stood in the doorway, black jacket, baseball cap, no insignia, no words. The flashlight mounted on his shoulder cast a cold white beam toward the console, right where I had been standing minutes before. He stepped in, his boots clanking against the metal floor with a sound that felt surgical, like a countdown disguised as footsteps. Dean shifted his gun slightly, ready to raise it, but I stopped him with a hand. We didn't know how many were out there. Making a sound now would be suicide. The man halted in front of the main screen. He knelt, examined the smudged dust, placed a gloved hand on the keyboard. He knew someone had been here. He was here to confirm it. And then he turned. The flashlight beam arced toward our corner. I stopped breathing. He froze. For a moment that stretched far too long, I felt him seeing us, through the dark. Like his eyes didn't need light to know we were there. Dean tightened his grip on the pistol. Karen edged back a half step. Then the man quietly pulled a small black device from his coat. A transmitter of some kind. Pressed a button. Beep. Above us, something shifted. A sound from the ceiling. And behind us. A metal door slowly began to close. Not by accident. It was being sealed. Dean cursed under his breath. We're being locked in. I clenched the crowbar tighter, locking eyes with Dean. They know we're here now. My voice was low, cold. And now, it's their move.